because if I don't, I'll totally forget about it. I'm Deborah Turner, and I'm accompanied today, of course, with our wonderful co-host, who's Dr. Mary Clark, and who helps us in all of this. And today, our topic is, I need a team, not just a list of volunteers. How do I start? And I don't know about you, but starting for me is always hard. And so the first thing that I thought of is maybe we could have a couple of guests. And I think some people on this group have made that suggestion as well. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves. And I'm going to start with Jenn Baier, who is in Wyoming, and she has Stella Montano with her. So Jenn, would you like to take over, please?
Yes, thank you so much. So I'm Jenn Baier. I'm the outreach director in AARP Wyoming, and Stella is our state president and my volunteer partner. I'll just do a little bit of level setting. I've been in Wyoming for 2 years, beginning on my 3rd year, but I've been with AARP for like 19 years now. So I've hopped around a little bit. So to level set, thanks. So to level set, we have a Sheridan Community Action Team, which Stella's husband, Clarence, leads with Stella. They're sustained. They were here before I got here. They were robust. They moved into sustained. Then we've got a new Cheyenne Community Action Team. They're a year old. A Veterans Advisory Council. They're a year old. A Government Relations Team. They're 2 or 3 years old. And an Executive Council. So that's the volunteer teams, but several of them are brand new. So we'll be talking a little bit more about that. Well, Stella introduces herself. We made y'all a graphic, so I'll share my screen, but Madam President.
Well, hello, everyone, and thank you for having us on. This is exciting to be able to share what we've been doing. I have actually known about AARP for kind of when we moved here to Wyoming. I live in Wyoming too, but I'm like 6 hours away from Jenn. We're in Sheridan, Wyoming. So fast forward, knowing about AARP, and we had a group, but it wasn't a community action team. And so a few years ago, we started a community action team, and it wasn't too long after that we went into COVID, and we didn't know, but we came out sustained after COVID. We kept doing things to be able to keep our volunteers active, but we couldn't do anything one-on-one with AARP. So we partnered. We found a lot of partners in the community, and we'll talk about that later, but that's how we ended up being a sustained community, and how we've kept it. And we do have a great volunteer group of community action team members, and I know Jenn has put together a great little PowerPoint here, and we'll go through it as we go through it. I think Jenn and I are tag teaming on this, and so that's what I do. I'm the state president, and I'm going into my 2nd year, and I've loved every minute of it, but it does keep me busy.
Great. So we'll walk through. Stella and I brainstormed and talked about, how have we really gone from a list of volunteers to some cohesive teams? Because there's been some strategy behind it that we're always thinking of. Both she and I are thinking about this all the time as sort of team leaders. Stella in Sheridan and me partnering in Cheyenne on these community action teams. So the first thing that we do is we always have things to do. And by that, I mean that in state planning time in October, each and every team comes up with a list of things that they want to do the next year. But that list is flexible. So we always have a list of things, but if there are new volunteers coming in, which there always are, we ask the new volunteers, are you interested in leading something? Do you see something missing from the list? We do that in a way where we want to align with our state office priorities. So we don't just open it up and say, hey, what do you want to do? We say the AARP Wyoming office is focused on veterans, fraud, caregiving, and social connections. So within those buckets, what do y'all want to do? And we've got some repeat events that are really great, but we also leave space. So things like a volunteer said, I want to run a walking club. I want to run a book club. I want to run a friendly voices or friendly visitor caring hearts program because the activities director quit at the local assisted living facility, and there isn't any activities there anymore. So I want to run crafts, and that has worked out really well for us because it helps us find leaders who are able to then build additional teams. So Stella, I'll turn it over to you to talk a little bit more about the Sheridan team and specifically how you guys do it.
Okay. Well, pretty much the way Jen described it. We have a community action team meeting once a month. We have about 25 members that are all active. And when I was kind of putting this together, I kind of thought of, well, this was over the weekend that I was doing this. And I thought, well, from Friday to Monday, I came up with like 7 different activities that we're all doing. And in those activities, there's a community action team member involved, or more than one in each one. And I thought I'll just kind of just share a little bit about that. There was at the last meeting, it came up that veterans are not able to get dental benefits if they're not associated, or if they're not service connected at the VA, and maybe they don't have insurance, dental insurance, and how can we help them? Well, from that, a meeting derived with our local Sheridan College. So there was, my husband was at that meeting, and he's a veteran. We also had an open house at a local gym where we were sharing all the things that AARP does virtually, and people could be at this gym. It's just a small gym, but it was a little open house. This is all going on within the weekend. We're working on community grants, the community challenge grants. We have a food drive that we do once a year. We call it the Super Bowl, SOUP. It's a play on words, during the Super Bowl, because our food banks here get very depleted during the holiday season. So come January, February, they're very depleted. So we always run that. It's our 10th year of running this food drive. So we were doing that. We're picking up the remainder of the food today. We partner with our local newspaper, and we have 2 different articles that we run monthly, but I oversee that. So I need to make sure that my author, my writer, didn't forget, because it has happened. So I've learned that I need to have something in the hopper in case somebody wasn't able to do it, or forgot, or went out of town. So that was going on. And then yesterday we received 250 roses from the Wish of a Lifetime and the AARP partnership. So we were separating and distributing those, and community action team members were picking them up, because some were delivering to a hospital, or to a nursing home, or to a senior center, or to individuals that just needed a little pick-me-up. We also have hopefully I'll get time to talk about our caregiver series that we did last year, that has taken a great leaps and bounds and went statewide, and now it's going national into a DIY kit for all the states. So we were working on that. Those were just some of the things that I kind of thought put together that we were doing just over the weekend. It's just kind of everybody's doing it, but without that team, we couldn't do that. If it was just a couple of people that were trying to stay in charge and take care of everything, you just have to let your people do things that they want to do. So that said, I'll let Jen talk about the next event that we have.
Sure. So recruitment, so to Stella's point, having a lot of things for a lot of people to do, and they're bonding and they're doing things together, we're mixing them up. This leads into our next point, recruiting and pairing. So I think one of the questions you'd asked us is, how much money do we spend on recruitment? If we are building a brand new team, we will pull out all the stops. We will send out postcards, we will send out emails, we will ask legislators, we will mention it on the radio, on TV, if we're formally recruiting for a new team or a new something. That could cost us anywhere $2,000-ish. If it's a year like last year where we don't really need a bunch of new volunteers, we're just recruiting by word of mouth, we're not spending anything. We're just talking, right? We're meeting people all the time. We're finding new volunteers. Each team is building because they tell their friends, or somebody comes to an event. We've gotten volunteers from movie events. We always mention, and have the volunteer cards ready. We have our volunteers talk about volunteering all the time as they introduce events. So word of mouth. But if it's a formal thing, $2,000 easily to build something new, like our Veterans Advisory Council or our Cheyenne team. As far as pairing volunteers up, I'll let Stella talk about that. But we do find that the faster we can get people in the door, we've tried to remove every roadblock possible so that if somebody is interested, they don't get stuck or hung up in the volunteer portal. Our biggest thing is get them to a live volunteer to talk to as quickly as possible. So when we recruit, we put our names, like my name or Stella's name, directly with a phone number, so that if somebody does come in through the volunteer portal, they get hung up or frustrated, they can just pick up the phone and call us, and we'll be like, worry about that portal later. Like, come talk to us. We want people to get in the door, start doing activities, make friends. And Stella, you want to talk about how you pair them up?
Sure. Just a quick example. Last month, Jen sent me an email and said that there had been somebody sent in an email asking about volunteering for AARP. Well, they were from Sheridan, not from Cheyenne, 5 hours away. So I called the person and invited him to our community action team. And she was so excited. She'd never been involved with it, was very excited. She just moved here from another state, but already had a job. And she just jumped right in. So we never let those volunteers just sit. If somebody has an interest, if we have an event that we have a table where people, whether it's maybe movies for grown-ups or whatever we're doing, a shred event, and people show any interest, we take that right away. And I'm always looking to see, who do you pair these people with? In a previous job that I was a volunteer coordinator at our local hospital, I found I had a lot of volunteers, but I had to have a team, kind of like what we're talking about. There were people that worked much better by themselves, one-on-one. Maybe they want to write a policy or do something like that. They don't want to work with other people. But there's people that socialization is so important, as we all know, with AARP, and we try to do that a lot for people. So we pair people together, and we ask them. One may take the lead, or they're both co-chairing a certain project, kind of like our food drive. We have some people that are picking up daily from the different places that we have the boxes set at. We have some people right now, there's several people delivering a full truckload and to one of our food banks. So we all, and with that, we have the people that organized it, the people that set out the boxes, and then we have the people that are just the muscle. We have a couple of guys that call me if you need anything physical. So that's what we do. We know those people. We pair them up well, and that's pretty much. Jen, would you want me to talk about some of our? I feel like when we're building a team and we're socializing, and at our community action team, we really promote that during our meeting. We ask everybody around the table. Everybody gets to talk. Whether it's 15 people or 25, everybody gets an opportunity to talk. We also have people that's where they meet, and that's where they find out, oh yeah, I can help you with that book club. We did this, and so they kind of build it themselves. If I see somebody that's kind of just hanging out and maybe needs something, I might step in. But for us, that community action team really takes off in doing projects themselves. And so that really helps. Food always comes into play. Food is something that brings people together, no matter what, whether you're having, just little snacks, or last time we had our meeting, I didn't even know 2 people brought big pots of soup. So we had dinner, and that wasn't even, it's just people want to be, they want to be involved. I think that's the main thing.
Great. Deborah, how much time we have just a few things left. Do you want us to kind of speed through?
Yes, please.
All right, we'll wrap it up here. So Stella, we'll keep it short. Because there's a couple more things. So communications, I'm just going to say one thing around communications and our volunteers. It's not a 9 to 5. Stella and I talk at 9 o'clock at night. We talk on weekends. I get volunteer text messages any time of the day. And because we formed relationships, I will often respond to those messages at any time. And I know Stella does the same.
And the only thing I'm going to throw in there is that I know that our state office supports us, they trust us, they believe in us, and that right there is a team. So not just our community action team, but I am part of a bigger team. And when we go national, we're part of that big team. So it's all connected.
Great. And then Stella, you want to mention empowerment quick and some of the roles you guys have developed?
Sure. So we have, like I said, certain community action team members that have specific things they like to do. When we did a caregiving event last year, it didn't start out being anything involved with AARP. And then one of our community challenge grants was funded at the national level. And so we were able to care for caregivers with respite, with food, and we had some of our community action team members that actually came together. We had a couple of nurses, we just had a great group. And so from there, we were able to do everything we did was volunteer. There was no cost other than what we used from our grant, but it didn't cost us anything because we had all volunteers, all a great team.
Great. And I saw a question in chat. I'll drop this infographic into chat for y'all when we finish, just so you have it. You're welcome to it. Let's see. Empowerment, recognition. Oh yeah, recognition is an all-year thing for us. While we do have one formal recognition ceremony in October with our volunteers of the year, Stella and I and the other volunteers are always looking for ways to recognize each other. I sent Stella some lavender tea the other day. I gave a volunteer who builds events for us a gift card. So we're authentically grateful because there are only 4 staff in this office and there are 105 volunteers. AARP Wyoming does not run without volunteers. Stella, anything to add on recognition before we wrap it up here?
No, I just think the support that we know that we have, we know what we can do for our volunteers. If we think we want to get them a gift card or just a chamber bucks from the local, we thank them. We thank them every day.
Yep. And we broke off the budget for Sheridan once Stella and Clarence, and I had gelled. I was like, oh, well, you guys, this is your budget. You guys figure out what you want to do with it, because they know the work of the office and the priorities. And so they manage their own community presence budget now, and their team builds their own events. They hand them in at state planning. I facilitate with the other teams yet who aren't quite as far along, but Stella and Clarence are 6 hours north and they're doing their thing with their team. And then last but not least, cross-pollination has been big for us because we are geographically large. We try to keep key volunteers mixed in those teams I mentioned at the very beginning, so that if somebody is on our Cheyenne Community Action Team, they're still part of our executive council, or if somebody's on our Veterans Advisory Council, they happen to also live in Sheridan, so they can brief the Sheridan team on what the Veterans team is doing. And that has solved problems for us more than once, like the dental thing that Stella mentioned. The Veterans Advisory Council was thinking, how can we help veterans without dental? And the Sheridan, they reported it out to Sheridan, and Sheridan's the one who solved the problem. So that's worked out really well. Stella, I'll give you the last word and then we'll wrap it.
Well, I hope that helped, because I know that you can have a lot of volunteers, but you really need a team, and building that team is allowing your people, giving them that permission to take a lead. And I think everybody has something to offer, and you just kind of find where they are. And you as that team leader need to have that plan B just in case. Thank you very, very much for having us.
That was great. Wow.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people, are wanting to ask questions, and are so appreciative of that presentation. Yes, 105 volunteers is phenomenal, and a staff of 4. So what I
Jen,
got from
could you
that,
stop sharing for a minute, please?
Yes. There you go.
what I got from that presentation was intentional. They have to be very intentional in everything they do, and you felt that as you heard them describe the building of these teams and the onboarding and making sure that new volunteers they don't find a barrier with the portal. They want to talk to them first, and they'll get them connected to the portal. So all of those things just represent such a vibrant spirit of welcoming the volunteers and making sure the volunteers get what they need when they need it. So I just want to say thank you to Jenn and Stella for such a phenomenal presentation of building and maintaining and rewarding some phenomenal teams in Wyoming. I'm sure there will be many of us that will want to capture and replicate what you're doing there. So I'm going to start with a question, and let me see if I can drop it in the chat too, so that you can see what I'm going to ask. So we've heard about the team building experience in action. What is your experience, or what in your experience does it take to build a team in your areas? And what is a team? And in your area, is the team necessary? The multifaceted question. You can answer any or one part of this. And anyone want to start?
You can raise your hand, you can take yourself off mute
You can
and
put it in the
add your
chat.
comments. Yes.
And can you accomplish what's needed with a list instead of a team?
Okay. Well, does anyone have any more questions for Stella and Jenn while we're thinking about our questions to you? Because I think there have been quite a few that have come through in the chat.
I can answer. There was one about what we did to start a new team. And so I just dropped our volunteer recruitment standard operating procedure in, because that's what we used when we were like, okay, we're building a brand new team. But also now that we've got 3 or 4 or 5 teams, like we needed a standard way of getting them in and getting them oriented, because Stella and Clarence are empowered to recruit their own volunteers. The volunteer leader who runs Cheyenne, she's empowered to run her own. So we just needed to pull something together that says, okay, when prospect comes trotting through door, here's what needs to happen next. Bam, 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 bam. So that we make sure they get in the portal, they get their orientation. But when we recruit, we literally, before that recruitment is hitting homes, we have a whole plan, right? So what's going to happen when the prospects start coming? Who's interviewing? What are they asking? What if they aren't a good fit? And that's all laid out in that document, because all of a sudden then you have literally the day the Cheyenne Community Action Team came in the door, there were 20 new people sitting there, and we were like, hello, nice to see you all. So we wanted to make sure we had a plan for them. The other big thing is that when that team came together for the first time, we had already in our minds mapped out their next 3 months, so that we knew, okay, we're going to be asking them what events to do. We're going to be slotting them into existing events. We're going to be buddying them with existing volunteers, so that there was not a time where people are just sort of floating around saying, I raised my hand to do something with AARP and there's nothing for me to do.
Can I just say that that's why when we have a community action team, we go around and we don't just say, does anybody have any questions? We say, Susie, do you have any questions? Dan, do you have any questions? So everybody gets a direct ask. So if they might have a question, they might have an idea, and a lot of things come out of that, because we find that in a room full of people, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, somebody might want to talk all the time and others just don't know how to get that word in. So we make sure that everybody gets an opportunity.
Thank you. So I see another question. What differences do you think might be needed to adjust to large urban locations?
Given that Cheyenne's our biggest city at 62,000 and everything else is smaller, I don't know that we're the state to talk about that.
I know.
And I know within this room of many, 46 to be exact, there are some other great examples of teams in existence.
Mm-hmm.
So please, if the questions that I posed earlier, what in your experience does it take to build a team, or what is a team? Or can you accomplish what is needed with a list? If there's anything related to either what Jenn and Stella talked about, or any of those questions related to what you do as your teams, please feel free to share.
Hey, it's Tara, Office of Volunteer Engagement. I'm in Nashville, Tennessee. I'll just weigh in on the list question because I think when we start talking about teams, often people start to think that's the only solution. And I think there are some times when a list works just fine. So a rapid response team, and an example is with telephone town halls or maybe even hub dialer. If you have those needs that pop up periodically and it's a very clear ask and you just need for some people to respond, it's really easy to use a list for that kind of thing. So those one-off opt-in kind of situations that are very easy to communicate and where it's kind of a one and done, those are great for lists. And then where we were talking about larger areas and people getting started, I know Virginia's on, and so they may want to talk about Northern Virginia and how they've been able to grow their team. But in starting out with team building, you go where there's momentum, right? So you do recruitment, you find that a lot of people are in, I don't know if my Nebraska friends are on, you find a lot of people in Omaha are actually in West Omaha. Then you start to hold meetings that are close to where those people can access those meetings. And then once that group starts to grow and the momentum builds, you know, you may find yourselves in a situation of being able to break off into smaller sub teams by area or by subject area or by specialty. It just, there are a lot of different ways that that can go. And I did put a shameless plug in the chat. If you want to dive deep into teams right away, we have a couple of on-demand resources for you.
Thanks, Tara. Really helpful.
Okay, we do have a question in chat that I think is intriguing as well. And that is from someone who wanted to know, they'd like to hear more stories about the buddy system and how that works out in Montana.
Do you want me to, this is Stella.
Yes.
And
Mhm.
so,
Please.
so in Wyoming, our community action team in Sheridan, the buddy system is, we try, for example, Cheyenne has a walking team, and they just started it probably a couple months ago, and it's going amazingly well. So one of our community action team members said, can we start one? How can we start one? Well, normally in Wyoming at this time of year, we have a lot of snow. We have no snow. It's like springtime here. So, but you know, it's supposed to snow tonight. You never know. So we have a lot of elders that, you know, you don't want them out walking. Our parks might not be, there's a lot of ice. So you just want people to be safe. So not everybody is a member of the YMCA. We're not a big community. So I met with the director, and we partnered, and we were given permission to start a walking group at the Y with people that aren't members. And so that buddy system, one person, if they're ill, somebody always needs to be at that walking group. So I found somebody that I thought, well, this woman walks every day. She did not raise her hand at the community action team meeting to say, I'll do it. So I called her and I said, would you be interested? She says, I'd love to do it. So sometimes just knowing your people and knowing what they like to do, pairing them, that's kind of our buddy system. And if you make them co-chairs, then they both have responsibility. If one can't, the other one can. That's a lot of what we do. Jen, what do you guys do for your buddy system?
Like you mentioned, you know, knowing people, right? Like I know that Stella's cat's name is Trudy, right? I know that, you know, that Stella's kids. I know knowing and taking that time to form relationships, that helps us pair people up. Like, oh, you like the walking club in Cheyenne. I was like, BJ, did you mention you play that supernatural game on Quest? I was like, Dave over here, he also plays that game. You guys should pair up together. And so like facilitating those connections.
Did that help? Did that answer some of those questions?
We'll turn that back to the audience. And it looks like Mary has her hand up.
So I'm just curious about your walking group. I mean, there's a lot of great stuff that you're presenting, but I'm going to talk about ask about the walking group. Do they walk every day? Do they walk once a month? do they brand themselves as AARP?
Yeah. This is super exciting. So in December, a volunteer knocked on the door. She wasn't a volunteer yet. She knocked on the door and she said, I watched the Netflix special Living to 100, The Secrets of the Blue Zones. I am sitting in my apartment and I am alone. I would like to start a walking club. And I said, come on in. I said, tell me about your vision. And so we went to the mall. We walked 7 mall laps together and we plotted out the AARP walking club. And so the AARP Mall Walking Club, because the weather is terrible here, meets on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 8 a.m. And the basic gist of it is that we start, everybody arrives at the food court, and then we say, okay, Chiefs fans, you go to the right, 49ers fans, you go to the left, just for the first lap. When you hit in the middle, switch, walk with whoever you came with. And so the first lap is always a social lap so that we're getting them to know each other, right? And then at the end, we've partnered with Jack's, which is a big ranch store here that has a coffee shop. And everybody from Walking Club is welcome to go to Jack's and have free coffee. So they've now gotten to know each other, and the Walking Club has been a great way to get new volunteers because now they're like, they've taken laps, they've walked with us, they've talked. I'd like to volunteer with AARP. What are y'all doing? And so we've got a bunch of new ones that have come in through the Walking Club, but that's how it works. I've got a full folder of the incentive program and everything we developed for this Walking Club. I'll drop it in the chat for you all. It's been super fun. The mayor came to the kickoff. The newspapers and TV covered it. It's been great, like super fun.
Oh, thank you.
We have some great information in the chat. Darlene indicated, and I won't read it to you because all of you can read it, but she indicated some great things that they do with the quarterly meeting. In Northern Virginia, Susan provided what they've done to break up their community action teams into smaller groups. And let me see, who else?
There's a question there, Mary, that I think would be it's a curiosity for those volunteers who are here who are part of teams. Do you feel like your volunteers are being voluntold versus given the option to share what they would like to do? That's a good one.
It is.
One thing, and then, Stella, if you want to add to it or anything, but what I always tell our volunteers is, hey, this is try before you buy. You're a volunteer. If you're not having fun and you're not happy, you will not hurt my feelings at all. If you want to change teams, if you want to give this a shot, see how it goes, and then tell me, you know what, this is not my cup of tea. So our volunteers feel, I think, empowered to try new things that maybe is not going to work out for them. And that's fine with me because I know they'll find somewhere that they're having fun and that they're happy, or they'll go on to another organization where they are. So that's been helpful for us.
I totally agree with you. And when we had an example that we thought we had somebody that was going to do fraud. They wanted to sign up to be a fraud prevention person. They were ready to go and travel with Jenn to Florida. And then something happened. Something happened and it just flipped. And she just decided, I don't think I can do that. I don't think I want to do that. Well, it was like, that's okay. We didn't want her to feel like she had failed us, like she could no longer be on our community action team. She's a retired nurse. She gives a lot. She had said that once she was done with nursing, she didn't really want to do any kind of caregiving or anything like that. Well, when we had that caregiving series, who raised their hand first? This gal raised her hand, and she absolutely loved being in the role of taking care of in the respite role. So, you never know where people are going, and you just allow them to grow, and they will grow. If you allow them to grow in your community action team, you will have them on many different projects.
And if we had lost her, that would have been super unfortunate because she also does all the data entry for the Sheridan team when iPads are not used, when there's physical forms still being used. Amy is uploading all that data and she's giving hours and hours a month. So it would have been super unfortunate had we said, sorry, you can't be a fraud fighter, you're out of here.
You're right.
Right.
Utilizing all those skills, and sometimes there's skills that volunteers don't speak up and offer, and sometimes as indicated, that direct ask can provide a lot of information. I see Karen Morgan, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I'm from Maryland, and we're just beginning our fraud team building efforts post-COVID. And to me, when I hear what everyone's saying regarding like sort of let people feel comfortable doing what they can do, and I'm all for that as a volunteer, but I'm also just concerned about the accountability aspect, because if you're building events around a team member who says, I want to do this, and then as a volunteer, they're definitely within their rights to not do that or to drop out. But but you as a volunteer, you're sort of like, you're kind of, maybe you're left holding the bag, or like in Maryland, we have a staff of 7. We have like approximately 200 or so active volunteers. I mean, how do you manage that? I mean, I haven't heard anything about that part.
I think that has a lot to do with having the whether we call it a co-chairing or the buddy system, because you've got more than 1 or 2 people doing that same project. So we had our project with our food drive, and one person became very ill. She had one of the respiratory, the norovirus, and she was one of the main people. But because we had 5 other people involved, she felt bad that she couldn't be involved, but she knew that because she was out sick, that her part was still covered. So we make sure that the size of the project, how many people, I mean, sometimes we have more than we need for an event, like let's say a shred event or a movies for grown-ups, but it's better to have more and then you're exactly right. And that lead, which would be us, always has to have that plan as well. So we have to either know that we're available if somebody can't step in, or we have those other buddy system co-leads. Did that help?
Yeah, it just seems like we have to get to know the volunteers. I mean, people come with different personalities. Sometimes people overpromise and underdeliver. Sometimes people underpromise and overdeliver, but you don't always know who those people are. You're not always sure who you can depend on and who maybe just sort of appear, at when they're comfortable, and that's trying to figure that out is like kind of, I just think it's hard to do that.
It can definitely be a little tricky. Like our volunteer who started the walking club here, she was super gung ho about it, but she also has very specific skill sets. And so very early on, I said, I will be by your side until you don't need me anymore. And then you're going to run this on your own. And let's also be looking at all these new people who are coming into walking club as we're walking with them. Let's figure out who can be your co-chair. And then from that rose a couple people who are like, oh, sure, I'm happy to help with this. I'm happy to help with that. But it was intentional on our part, knowing I can't be with you forever walking Mondays or Tuesdays and Thursdays at 8 a.m. So let's make a plan to get you some friends here to help out with this, to keep this going.
This is a really common concern, Karen. So thanks for bringing it up, and it probably could have its own conversation and one of the issues, I think I've seen 2 things that are really common. So one is when the team is invested in planning the work, they have more skin in the game, right? They don't want to let down the plans they made. And so that's a lot different from being asked to do things that you had no part in planning. So that's one aspect of it. The other aspect that I've seen, and I've lived it, so I can speak to this by in many different levels, is that sometimes when you have that fear, it's because you've been part of teams where people were letting you down and they claimed that they were going to show up and they didn't. And that could be at work. It could be in your personal life. It could be in all those places. It could be fears from school when they made you work in a team and you had to do all the work. Our teams are intentionally designed around, establishing that everybody's responsible for the work getting done. And that if there are things you don't want to do, it's okay to say no. But what happens sometimes, and this is a point of transition, we know this is happening across the country because we've come back to in person, and you're going to have people who are kind of coming and going. It's easier to say no to things. There's a number of things that could be at play. But when you start to consistently see people not showing up when they said they would, it's time to reevaluate. And those are things we can help you all with. But we knew that we were in serious trouble when I was in the Tennessee state office, when it was on a consistent basis that people were dropping out very close to large events, and the staff would have to drop everything to go cover. This has been years ago, almost a decade, but we knew we had to take a step back and say, what's gone wrong here, right? And we realized it was kind of what Jen was talking about, where we hadn't been inviting in as many people along the way. We had people saying, oh, we've got enough people, and so they weren't accepting new people into the fold, and there was a lot of that kind of stuff happening. And so we were able to take a hard stop, take a look at things, and see where we needed to shore things up so that we could get back into balance with making sure we were turning up when we said we were going to, and also saying no to those events that people were not really showing up for. Being able to say no, and just, it doesn't matter if you've done it for 15 years. Nobody wants to do it anymore, so we're not going to do that. We're not going to add it to the calendar.
Those are all some great suggestions. And I think you can save the chat. I would suggest that you save the chat, although I know we're going to put it in the portal, but if you want it at your fingertips, save those attachments that Jen put in, because they're some wonderful attachments, not only about their recruitment, but about their walking club. You get the whole file, so download those to your computer. And Deborah, I'm going to turn it over to you, but try to save the chat if you want immediate access to that information.
Right. Thank you, Mary, because we will be putting the chat in the portal, along with the recording, along with the transcript. And then we'll also make it available by YouTube, so that you can have multiple ways of getting some of this wonderful information that Stella and Jen have been sharing with us, and that you have been sharing with each other. So are there more questions? I mean, we've got just a few minutes, but if there's a question that's burning now, while we've got these two wonderful people or this group facing you, Tara's here, please raise your hand, come off mute, and have at it.
I'm going to put in a shameless plug for the volunteer facilitation and training team, because the ladder of engagement is something that Karen was referring to indirectly, that perhaps volunteers are given responsibility more than they want to at that time. But if you ease them along the ladder of engagement, that might help you and the volunteer feel more comfortable, so that you don't feel like, you know, somebody might back out at the last minute. So that's something that our team can help provide, either virtually or in person. Reach out to Deborah, myself, Tara, if that's something. I see some other questions and comments in the chat. Somebody said something about walking with the doctor. Harriet said they do walk with the doctor in North Carolina. And have anybody ever tried that? And somebody else said, let me see, VFIT, yes, we're coming to Wyoming. Two of our colleagues are coming to Wyoming, and they're looking forward to it. And I'm going to shut up and let somebody else say something if somebody has something to say. This has just been a wonderful exchange.
If you don't mind, I'd like to say a quick word, and that is kudos to Wyoming, kudos Stella and Jen, because part of your success is also thinking outside of the box. You involve volunteers right at the very beginning when it comes to the state planning, because we want to do everything, but sometimes there are things within the parameter of AARP that we can or cannot do. But thinking beyond that box and allowing volunteers to do things that are of importance to them is part of the key to success. So think beyond the box. Whatever you may have done in the past, if it's not working, step back, think about it, has already been said. But kudos to you guys for allowing that innovative spirit, if I said that word correctly, to take hold.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks. And that reminds me, Marilyn, you know, because everybody has that fear, right? That if we just ask volunteers what they want to do, it might not be something that they're allowed to do. And so we made it a game, right? We made it a game during state planning, because the Cheyenne team is new. They don't know as much about AARP as the Sheridan team. They might have some really interesting different ideas. we had them give me all the ideas of things you want to do. And then as a team, we sat down, we reviewed the state office priorities, and we did an exercise called yes, no, maybe. And the team talked about and pitched their ideas, and then we voted. And if the majority of the volunteers voted yes, we want to do this event, and it aligns with the state, and that was the criteria. Does it align with the state office? Is it going to engage the public? How much does it cost? And they decided themselves, yes, no, maybe, which events they wanted to do in Cheyenne this year. And it worked out pretty darn well. I was 95% in agreement, and 5% of things where I probably wouldn't have done them, but if they would like to try them, go for it.
Right. Okay, well, thank you all very, very much. Thank you, Stella and Jenn, for coming and helping to flesh out this topic that I think is something that's always in the back of our heads. How are we going to do this? So I think you have given us lots to think about, and knowing that our next meeting is on March the 12th. These are always on the second Tuesday of the month. The topic is going to be, the Andrus Award is great, but what else is there for volunteers? So we're going to try to work on that in anticipation of National Volunteer Month in April. So that's going to be, we're switching topics around just a bit. Thank you all for coming. Again, all this information is going to be in the portal chatter group for the exchange. Doesn't require membership. You all have access to it. All you've got to do is just go in, and it'll be there. Today is Tuesday. It'll be there by close of business on Wednesday. It's my Valentine's Day work. It'd be to get all of that in the chat group. Okay. So thank you all very much. I appreciate your coming. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you all. Great conversation.
Fantastic. Did everyone stop recording? That was so beautiful.
Yes, I will try to stop it.